Okay, good evening, everybody. It's Monday night, which is Parsha. This week's Parsha is Parsha Shemini, which just in the simple meaning of the pasuk, the Torah is saying, "Vayibiyam Shemini." We learned in last week's Parsha there were 7 days of what's called Shivas Yimei HaMiluyim, the 7 days when they prepared everything for the Mishkan, they practiced. And Moshe Rabbeinu was the Kohen Gadol that week. They come Vayem Hashmini on the 8th day. Now it began for real. That was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Rashi says. So the whole parsha is called Vayem Hashmini. As we'll discuss, even though, okay, let's wait a second with that. Now, what is the concept of Shemini? Shemini is a level, Chassidus explains, the Klei Yakar really says this, also one of the main commentaries on Chumash. The Klei Yakar explains as follows. 7 represents the laws of nature. 7 represents 7 days of the week. It represents time and place. So we're dealing with the number 7. It's a very special number 7, as we'll see. But 8 represents the supernatural. In fact, the Gemara says, the Medrash says, that the harp in the Beis HaMikdash had 7 strings to it. The harp of Mashiach is going to have 8 strings to it. We know that the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash had 7 branches. Hanukkah, which represents the concept of Mashiach, we know there's 8 branches in the menorah, besides the shamas. So you have this concept of 7, which represents nature, and 8, the Klei Yakar says, represents the supernatural. Now, what's interesting is 7, the Medrash says, Kol Hashvi Chavivim. All 7 are very precious. 7th day of the week is Shabbos. 7th month is Tishrei. 7th year is the sabbatical year. You have the 7 days of Miluyim. So the number 7, the Medrash says, Moshe Rabbeinu was the 7th from Avraham Avinu. So the number 7 represents very basic, important Judaism, but it's the concept represented in time and place. 8, on the other hand, represents the supernatural. So what happened here by Yom HaShmini, on the 8th day, which Rashi says was Chodesh Nisan, that's when the Mishkan was erected as the full-blown Mishkan, not as preparing it, practicing. This was not spring training like they say in baseball. This is the opening season. This is when the for real, the games begin for real, when the Mishkan began for real. So there's a few issues over here. Number one, the name of Shemini is the name of the entire Parsha. That means everything in the Parsha is connected to the inyan of Shemini. Yet, if you look at the end of the Parsha, especially by Shishi and Shvi, the Torah speaks about the kosher animals, the non-kosher animals. It speaks about the shkotzim v'ramoshim, the creepy, crawly things. Shkotzim means despicable. It deals with a lot of despicable things. How does those despicable things get to the level of Shemini that represents the supernatural and something which is above nature? But before we answer that question, we're going to answer it by explaining a different question. Shemini represents, we said, the Beligvol, the infinite. How is it possible? Chassidus asked the question, the commentaries asked the question, how is it possible that a finite human being, by doing mitzvahs, which are bound to time and place? Now, just remember, all mitzvahs, like you can't, sukkah is in a certain place. You can only fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah in the sukkah. You can only fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah on sukkahs. Every single mitzvah has a time and a place. You want to do tefillin, it has to be during the day, and it has to be on your hand. You want to do lighting Shabbos candles, It has to be before Shabbos in a physical candle. So everything of Torah mitzvahs really is limited and confined in time and place. So then the question is, how is it possible that finite behavior can reach the level of Shemini? How is it possible that the Aveda, which are limited Aveda of Torah mitzvah, tefillin have to be certain dimensions, tzitzis has to be 4 and not 5. How is it possible that these finite levels can reach the infinite? So the answer is as follows. The infinite represents something above logic. In other words, a human being's uniqueness is that they're intellectual. There's no, but it says, what separates a human from animals or from anything else, we have free choice. We have understanding. We have seichel. But even the seichel of a human being is limited. It's still limited. You could be 20 Einsteins in one brain. It's still a limited brain. So granted, the uniqueness of a person is that they have seichel, they have intellect, but the bottom line is intellect is limited. So how does a Jew reach godliness, which is super limited, unlimited? And this is where the concept of Kabbalah's oil, acceptance of the yoke. We do mitzvahs because Hashem said so. Not because I understand it, not because I think it's the right thing to do. A Jew does Torah mitzvahs with Kabbalah's oil because Hashem said so. When a Jew does Torah mitzvahs because Hashem said so, that level within the Jew, relatively speaking, is supernatural because it's above the limitation of his intelligence. Kabbalah's oil comes from the essence of the neshama. Kabbalah's oil comes from a level which is higher than the intellect of the Jew. And if it comes from a higher intellect of the Jew, relatively speaking, it's the infinite level within the Jew. Just like the concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim, which basically means going out of limitations. How could a Jew go out of limitations? Because whatever we do is going to be limited. But like we learned many times, when a Jew goes above and beyond their nature, which our nature is our limitation, when a person goes above and beyond the limitation, which is very difficult to do, by the way, because we're breaking our nature. So what happens then is within the human, we reach the infinite state, so to speak. And when Hashem sees that we reached the Kabbalah's the infinite state within the finite human being, Hashem reveals from above. It was a revelation from above. We find a similar thing, by the way, by Sfira Sa'im and Shavuos. The Jews, when they left Mitzrayim, they were told they're going to get the Torah in 49 days. So the Jews started counting the Sfira Sa'im. And every day they elevated themselves one level to another level to another level. Finally, they reached the 49th level, which is the highest level, the Gemara says, a human being could reach. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, in his lifetime, the Gemara says, only reached the 49th level of Kedusha. When he passed away, the Mizrach Maggid said, he was buried in Har Nevoi. We learned this in the past. Har Nevoi. Nevoi means Nun Boi. When Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, because he did what was humanly feasible for a Jew to attain, so Hashem gave him as a gift the 50th level when he passed away. Just like by Shavuos, the Jews prepared themselves for 49 days. They refined every possible attribute, every possible level. And then Hashem gave them a gift. On the 50th day, when they received the Torah, Hashem gave them a gift from above. And the same thing is when it comes to the level of B'yom HaShmini. When Hashem sees that the Jew is going above and beyond their character, they're breaking their nature a little bit. It doesn't have to be unbelievable amount. A Jew every so often just does above and beyond what they think they're able to do, or something that they don't want to do, and they do it even in spite of the fact that they don't want to do it, and they do it anyway. They reach the level of B'yom HaShmini. And therefore, this is why the Rebbe explains in Parsha Shemini, which is such a lofty thing, the higher the nature, why it deals in this week's Parsha with shkotzim, v'nemoshim, bugs, and despicable creatures. Because the Torah is telling us two things. The beginning of the Parsha is talking about the ultimate lofty level that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, came down into the Mishkan. That was God's home. That was Hashem's home. Hashem came down in this week's Parsha. Hashem came down into the Mishkan. So the Torah says like this. What does Shemini mean? Shemini means, like we just explained, Kabbalah soil, above your nature. Somebody could be on a very lofty level, to the extent that God's about to come down to them. So they might think, because I'm such a lofty Jew, why do I need to have Kabbalah soil? I have a great understanding of God. I'm super great. The Pasuk says no. Even when you're talking about Hashem's descent to the Mishkan, the prerequisite of that is Shemini Kabbalah soil. You have to accept the yoke of Hashem. Another Jew will come along and say, I'm into bugs and all these creepy, low, super low things. So what do you expect me to do? So it means even in those low levels, you could bring down the level of Shemini. If you do with those low, creepy things, so to speak, what Hashem wants us to do, so then even in such things, you're able to bring down the level of Shemini, the supernatural level of the infinite level of Hashem. You're able to bring it down into even the lowest of things. And that's why the Parsha is called Shemini. It's not Sheva. It's the Shemini that follows the 7. It's the level of 8. And that level of 8 manifests itself after the Aved of the Jew in Kabbalah soil, acceptance of the yoke, which is above the time and the place, which is 7 of the Jew, and he reached that level. And the Kabbalah soul is even in the lowest of the creepy things. Okay, now this week's Parsha talks about the Mishkan. Okay, the Aved of Mamish, the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, amongst other things that we'll get to. There was a din in the Rambam. It's based on the Mishnah Midas, but there's a din that the Beis HaMikdash needed to have Shmira. The Beis HaMikdash was guarded in 24 places, the Mishnah says. And the Rambam, when he brings down this Mishnah, the Rambam says like this: it doesn't need protection because of the robbers that are going to want to steal something. That's not the reason. The reason was when a king's palace is guarded, it's a form of respect. But the Rambam says it's not only for no thievery and robbery or this desecration of the Beis HaMikdash. It's also honoring Hashem by having guards outside the palace. It's not like lahavdil billions of our Buckingham Palace. You know, the guards, the changing of the guards, it's all a form of the honor and respect that you give to royalty. But the question is like this. The place of the Beis HaMikdash today is still holy. The Gemara says, Kedusha le'izazim memkaima. Har HaBayis today that you're not allowed to go on, the Har Mountain, right, where the Beis HaMikdash was, inside the Kaisel Maravi, where according to Allah you're not allowed to go into today, that is still the Kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash. So why don't we have to guard it today? So simply, we can't guard it today because it's under Arab control. We didn't have the guards. I mean, but in the spiritual sense, the personal Beis Hamikdash, that a Jew has within them, okay? The Rambam says there's technically two reasons for the Shemitah. One is from negativity, robbers, desecration, and one is to glorify and sanctify the king. What does this mean in a personal level and our own personal Beis Hamikdash? So the Rebbe explains we need to have two types of Shemitah. Not in Har Bayis. Over there, it's the mosque over there that's run by Arabs. It's dangerous to have Jewish guards there. But the Rebbe explains in our personal Mishkan that we all have, the Beis Hamikdash that we have within us, we need to guard of two things. Number one, we need to guard it from evil forces, right? From thievery, robbery, people that want to desecrate Kedusha. A Jew within himself has to set up a guard system that doesn't allow evil to penetrate our personal Beis Hamikdash. That's, so to speak, in a level, it's called Sur Meirah, turning away from evil. Don't allow evil to come in. We need to guard it. Like it says by matzahs. It's the Pesach season. Ushmartem es hamatzos. You have to guard the matzahs that they shouldn't become chametz. What is that in a spiritual level? Matzahs represent humility. Matzahs represent kedusha. Chametz represents ego and evil. So you have to guard the matzahs. That what? That you shouldn't become chametz. They shouldn't become evil. But there's a second aspect of guarding the Beis Hamikdash, and that is honoring Hashem. The second level of, honoring Hashem, that is in the positive way, in Asete. What does that mean? When we do a mitzvah, positive, not Sur Meirah, turning away from evil, that you need the guards, one level of guards, to protect ourselves from the evil forces that want to destroy us spiritually. But then you have another level. You have another level of guarding Hashem, which shows respect and honor and dignity to the royalty, to Hashem. What does that mean? It means very simple. When we do mitzvahs, we have to do them with honor and respect. What does that mean? To give just a few simple examples. When a person is davening, they're davening to Hashem. We're asking Hashem for our needs. As the Gemara says, the analogy of this is like an Eved standing before the king, a servant standing in the presence of the king. Now you could daven, pardon the expression, in your pajamas, not because God forbid you're sick in the hospital. You could just, you're too lazy to get dressed, you know what I mean? I'll daven, listen, God will accept my prayers ad liyah. Yes, he will. But is that called giving respect to Hashem? Is that the proper honor and guarding of giving dignity and honor to Hashem? We're talking to him, we shouldn't be dressed properly. So any other mitzvah that we do to connect to Hashem, it should be done with honor and dignity and excitement of doing it. All those things are also guarding the Mishkan, guarding the internal Beis Hamikdash, not only from the negative things to make sure they don't come in and destroy the Beis Hamikdash within us, but also in a way that we're respecting Hashem, in a way that it's proper honor and dignity when we do a mitzvah. It should be done with intent. It should be done respectfully done. It should be done dressed properly, and on all those various different ways of doing a mitzvah. Okay, then there's something major that's going on in today's Parsha. Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's two sons. Aaron had four sons. Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Isamar. The two older sons, Nadav and Avihu, the pasuk says, when the glory of God came down, Hashem's glory came down, a fire came out and consumed, and everybody trembled. So it says, Vayikhu b'nei Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, the two oldest sons of Aaron, each one took their pan. Vayitnu b'ahin eish, they put fire in the pan, and they put ketores, incense, and they brought it to fire before God that God did not command them to do. So it says, Hashem, a fire came out from heaven and consumed them. They died. Moshe says to Aaron, this is what God told me before, I am going to be sanctified with my holy ones, with the ones that are close to me. And Rashi quotes in the Medrash a remarkable sentence over here. Moshe said to Aaron, my brother, I know that Hashem is going to sanctify his name with, I thought it was me and you, because who's greater than me and you? You and I. Now Moshe Rabbeinu is emes. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't, he wasn't the politician that said lies to make people feel good. He's talking to his brother Aaron. He said, that Nadav and Avihu are even greater than you and I. Okay? In Parsha's Achri Meis, later on, the pasuk says concerning their death, Achri Meis Shnei Bnei Aaron. We read this on Yom Kippur, by the way, in the morning Kriyas HaTorah of Yom Kippur. Hashem speaks to Moshe and he says, Achri Meis Shnei Bnei Aaron, when the two sons of Aaron died, Bekarvasam Lifnei Hashem, when they got too close before Hashem, Vayamusu, when they died. Nadav and Avihu died, and the pasuk says, Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to Aaron, they're greater than me and you. Bekarvasam Lifnei Hashem. And the Gemara, by the way, says, the Medrash says, there are 6 Avedas that Nadav and Avihu did. Okay? But understanding the concept that they were greater than Moshe and Aaron, what was the issue with Nadav and Avihu? What did they do wrong? So Kabbalah and Chassidus and the Orach Chaim HaKodesh and the commentaries of the Chumash, especially according to Chassidus and Kabbalah. I'm going to give make a challenge over here a little bit, because it's a very Chassidus 101. There's a pasuk in the Nevuah of Yecheskel when he saw the throne. It says, Achayis Rotze V'Sheiv. The Chayis, the Malachim, are longing and coming. Longing and coming. The Aveda of a Jew has to be in a way of Rotze V'Sheiv. Rotze V'Sheiv means as follows. Let's speak practical language. On one side, a Jew needs to have a longing to become one with Hashem. Get out of the body, which is coarse and mundane, and all the temptations come from that. And the person has to want to leave the body and become closer to Hashem. At the same time, equally, and if not more important, a Jew needs to understand that's not what Hashem wants me to leave the body. Hashem wants me to be in a body. So there has to be this constant dual thing. From one side, a Jew should not be complacent being in the body and say, yeah, I really like it here. The Jew should want to be next to Hashem. They would really ideally want to get out of the body and become closer to Hashem. At the same time, they need to have the shuv. They need to have the realization that the neshama, Hashem wants the neshama to be in the body. Now, it's brought down in Sfarim. You ever notice, either by ourselves or watching somebody else, you ever notice when somebody is davening or learning, subconsciously they'll shuckle, they'll shake. It's called shuckling in Yiddish. Shuckle in Yiddish means to shake. People will shake. They're davening, they'll sway back and forth. So where does it come from? The subconscious. Where does it come from? So it says in Sfarim that with the time of davening, the neshama feels the level of the body. It could be thinking about a million things, but the neshama is actually feeling this level of godliness. And because the neshama is feeling this level of godliness, at that time, the neshama wants to get out of the body. It's flickering. Like the candle of the neshama is likened to a candle. Ner Hashem nishma sadam. We learned that's why anytime you deal with death, you have candles. Why? Because Shlomo Melech says the candle of Hashem, Ner Hashem nishma sadam. The neshama is the candle of God. The flame of a candle is always flickering. Why does it flicker? Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, based on the Rambam, that because the source of the moon, of fire, is under the rotation of the moon. And the nature of everything is to go back to its original nature. So the neshama, which is a fire, that's why fire always goes upward. Science says because it's lighter than the air. According to Torah, the real reason why fire goes up, because that's where its source is. And as Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, even though the fire knows when it leaves the wick, it doesn't exist anymore. When it's down here, it's existing as a flame. When the flame leaves, it knows it's not going to be existing anymore. Nevertheless, that's its nature. Alter Rebbe says, Kachul Tivai. And the nature of something is not explainable. It's above logic. So on neshama, when they're playing ball, they're not shuckling. You know what I mean? They're not swaying back and forth. When they're learning, they're davening, they're swaying and they're swinging back and forth. Why is that? Because the neshama at that time wants to leave the body, like the flame wants to leave the wick. At the same time, the neshama needs to understand, though, that that's not what Hashem wants. That's maybe what I want, my neshama wants. But at the same time, a Jew has to understand, great, but that's not what Hashem wants. Chassidus explains, what was the sin of Nadav and Avihu? The sin of Nadav and Avihu was, can you imagine the great revelation of godliness that was going on when God's glory came down in the Mishkan? The greatest glory possible, in the Beit, not like the Beit HaMikdash, but very great revelation of godliness. Nadav and Avihu was bekarvasim lifnei Hashem. The Or Chaim explains what do you mean bekarvasim lifnei Hashem. They got too close to Hashem. They didn't want to stay anymore in the body. Their neshama left their body and went up, which was a sin. Vayomusu, they sinned because that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants a neshama in a body. Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Aaron and he says to his brother to console him, these two guys are so great that they were just inflamed with that revelation of the Shekhinah that happened at that time, that they actually couldn't handle it anymore. They couldn't handle it. It's too great a revelation. But that was their sin. We find a similar story in the Gemara in Chagiga. The Gemara says, Arba nichnasu lepardis. 4 rabbis of the Gemara. There was Rabbi Kiva, Elisha ben Avuya, who was the Rebbe of Rameir, Ben Azai, and Ben Zayma. These 4 people, the Gemara says, nichnasu lepardis. What does that mean? So the commentaries in the Gemara explain Pardes represents very lofty, the Rambam says this also, very lofty levels of Kedusha. They went in, is similar to the sin of Nadav and Avihu. They went to a place that was too great that Hashem didn't want, that Hashem wants them down here. So the Gemara says like this: Elisha ben Avuya became an Apikatus, became a non-believer. Ben Zema and Ben Azai, one went crazy, and terrible things happened to them. By Rabbi Kiva, it says, Nichnes b'sholem, v'yotze b'sholem. The version in Ein Yaakov is, Rabbi Kiva went in peacefully, and he came out peacefully. So the question is, the Gemara says, there were 4 people went in there. Okay, this one died, this one became an applicator, and one went nuts, one died, one became an applicator. So it should have said, Rabbi Kiva, Yotze b'sholem. Rabbi Kiva went out peacefully. One died, one became crazy, one became an applicator, and Rabbi Kiva, Yotze b'sholem. Why does the Gemara, according to that version, say, Nichnes b'sholem? He went in peacefully, and therefore he came out peacefully. So Chassidus explains many, many places. The sin of those 3 was like Nadav and Avihu. They went into a realm of godliness that cannot stay in the body. They went in knowing that, again, all these things, becoming an applicatus, dying, or becoming crazy, these are not normal things that happen to a person. Those 3 were like the sin of Nadav and Avihu. They were great tzaddikim. Ben Azai, Ben Zemi, Shir, with the Gemara talks, Elisha ben Avuya before he became an applicator. You should hear the levels of the Chachamim's praise for these great people. Yet, what was their sin? They had a one-way ticket in. They didn't go in with a return ticket. Gemara says, what was the uniqueness of Rabbi Akiva? Nichnas b'sholem v'yotze b'sholem. Why did Rabbi Akiva come out peacefully? Why didn't he get carried away with that level of godliness? Because Rabbi Akiva went in with the correct attitude. Rabbi Akiva understood that we need to go out. That's not what Hashem wants us to stay there. Hashem doesn't want the neshama leaving the body. Hashem wants that the neshama should come back down to earth and be here in the world. And that was the uniqueness of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's uniqueness was nichnes b'sholem v'yotze b'sholem. Why did he come out peacefully? Because he entered peacefully. Our problem is not the getting lost up there. Our problem is we're too much down here. So we need to have both things. We need to have the longing that the neshama really wants to get out of here. And that longing is demanding, because as the Baal Shem Tov said, but it's based on the Gemara, the Ma'akim Shiratzayne Shaladam, in the place where the person's will is, Shamhu Nimtza, that's where you are. I always give a mashal for this. You can have a kid sitting in a classroom, but he's looking out the window. So where is that kid really? He's outside in the playground. You can have another child walking by. He's outside the classroom, but he's looking in. So where is he really? He's inside the classroom. The Baal Shem Tov said based on the Gemara Neidavin. In a place where a person's will is, there they find themselves. So from one side, that's the Rotzing. The person should have a longing that we don't want to be here. We really want to be connected to Hashem. But what does Hashem want? That Hashem wants us to be here. I'll give you another example of Chassid, Shliach, and the Rebbe, for instance. A shliach has a longing to be with the Rebbe. They're in Yopitzville. They're in, the other end. They're in Uganda. Okay, there's shluchim in Uganda. The guys in Uganda, guys in who knows where, in the Congo. There's shluchim in all these places. Yeah, there's no question that the shliach has a yearning to be with the Rebbe. A chassid wants to be with his Rebbe. At the same time, the chassid needs to know, but the Rebbe wants me to be here. Yes, you need to have the longing to be with the Rebbe, because if you don't have the longing to be with the Rebbe, then you're going to get stuck in the evil of the place where you find yourself in. I think we learned in the past, when Yosef named his two sons, Menashe and Ephraim, even though Ephraim was greater than Menashe, so why was Menashe the firstborn? So again, Chassidus explains, Menashe means, why was he called Menashe? Ki neshani elakim es beis avi. Hashem wanted me to forget my father's house. Ephraim, Yifrani elakim be'eretoni. Hashem made me prosper. Ephraim represents prospering in Egypt. What does Menashe represent? Not forgetting where you came from. These are the two goals, Menashe and Ephraim. Who is the main one that Yaakov put the right hand on top of? Ephraim. Because the ultimate goal is to be successful in Golus where you are. But in order to be successful where you are, you need to not forget where you came from. You have the longing to the Yaakov's home. You have a longing to the one that sent you. Because then you're still connected to the sender. Once you forget about the sender, then all you end up doing is being in a place of Golus that you're going to get caught up by it. And that's what happened exactly with Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu saw such a fabulous level of godliness. Nadav and Avihu said, we just can't take it anymore to be in the body. But on their level, it's called Chet Nadav and Avihu. On their level, it's a sin. Why is this? Why we should have that problem? Why was it a sin? Because on their level, they should have realized that's not really what Hashem wanted from them. Hashem wanted them to be like Moshe and Aaron. But Moshe told Aaron, they're even greater than you. Okay. Next, at the end of the at Shishi, in this Parsha, it speaks about the kosher animals. These are the animals that you should eat. I remember one time, it was personally involved for a few bachim being sent to Australia at that time. The Shabbos before, the Rebbe spoke. Afterwards, we knew we were going already. So there was a verbeng in this Parsha Shemini. It was after Pesach already. And the Rebbe said, people learn Rashi, and they just read it, and they don't stop to think for a minute what Rashi is actually saying over here. And the pasuk says, "Dabro b'nei Yisrael lemer," speak to the Jews and say, "Zeis achai." This, ze means pointing. Ze is masculine. Zeis is feminine of pointing. Ze means you're pointing to it. If it's not in front of you, you can't point to it. Okay. So Rashi says, "Zeis achai asher techedu." So Rashi says, "Malamed." This teaches us. Shayameisha eiches b'chaya. Moshe Rabbeinu was holding the beasts that he was talking about. Umara Eisel Yisrael, and he showed it to the Jews, and he said, "This you could eat." And Rashi says, "Af b'shrotze hamayim." Okay, even in the creatures of the water, Rashi says, "Achaz mikol min umin." Moshe Rabbeinu held every fish and showed it to them. This you could eat. This you can't eat. V'chein ba'oif. And v'chein b'shiratzim. Okay? Because by the fish it says also that, and it says Ela, and Shratim says Zelo Chamatam. So Rashi says a very interesting thing. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was telling the Jews the kashrus, we know animals need to have its cod has split hooves. Fish have to have fins and scales. The Gemara says the Rambam brings down, if it has scales, it automatically has fins. So you don't have to look for fins. If you see that fish has scales, then you know it automatically has fins. But Rashi is saying something very interesting thing over here. Moshe Rabbeinu pointed to every single animal, horse, camel, donkey, cows, you name it, every single bug, every single bird, every single thing from the water. Yeah, now think about it. The Rebbe said that when he said the Sikh, he said, he showed them even a kangaroo from Australia. Because kangaroos are basically primarily originated, so to speak, in Australia. So the Rebbe said, you learn this Rashi, you run through it, and you don't stop to think what's going on over here. Where was Moshe Rabbeinu in this time? In a desert. Where did he get all the fish from to show the Jews? Where did he get all the animals, the beasts, and every single bug? All the shratzim, all the bugs, the creepy, crawly bugs. How in the world did Moshe Rabbeinu get them to show the Jews this you can eat and this you can't eat? And yet Rashi says to a 5-year-old kid learning Chumash that Moshe Rabbeinu pointed to every single animal, bird, fish, bug. And the Rebbe said the simple explanation is, when a Jew has to learn and teach Torah, God takes care of all their necessities. That's what the Torah is teaching us. Who cares the historical fact that Moshe Rabbeinu showed everybody the birds and the animals? Who cares? It happened 5,000 years ago. Whatever, 3,000 years ago. Why? What's the Torah teaching us here? The Torah teaching us very simple. When you need to teach Torah, anything that at your disposal that you're going to need to teach them, Hashem will give you, if you're a proper teacher like Moshe Rabbeinu was. So Hashem took care of everything. That's stam and pasuk. Now, everything in Torah is, like we said, it's a lesson for us personally in our life. We know, and we mentioned, that what's the kosher animal? Kosher animal means it chooses cud. That means it keeps digesting. There's a few stomachs, right? As everybody knows. It chews it, it goes into one stomach, it brings it up, we choose it again, goes into another stomach, all the various different stomachs of animals that chew their cud. Plus, it has to have split hoofs. Now, there is kosher animals that have both signs, and they're treifa animals. What does this represent in us? The Rebbe explains the godly soul as the kosher animals. The animal soul, the Yetzer Hara, that's what the non-kosher animals. Okay? Now, what are the signs of a kosher animal? What are the signs that you can elevate this godly soul that we have, which is called the kosher animal, so to speak? So what does it need? It needs to have split. We'll start with the split hoofs. What is split hoofs? It's one hoof, but it's split in half. Okay, that's what the definition of split hoof. What does the split mean? What does the split represent? What are we splitting? So the Rebbe explains in a Sikha, we're splitting spiritual and physical. The Nefesh Sholakir, the godly soul of the Jew, needs to understand that we have to separate between the spiritual realm and the physical realm, but not completely separated. If you notice, split hooves doesn't mean it's two hoofs. It's one hoof, which is split in half. We need to separate ruchnius from gashmius. We need to separate the spirituality from the physicality, but at the same time, both realize one hoof. Hashem wants us to serve him spiritually, and Hashem wants us to serve him physically. But we need to know what's spiritual and what's physical. We shouldn't combine the two together. Now, why? Because Hashem wants, why doesn't Hashem want complete split? Because Hashem wants that the Gashmis, the physical, should be infused with the Ruchnis, with the spirituality. Hashem doesn't want Gashmi, physical and spiritual separated. Many people are of the opinion, other religions for sure, Torah mitzvahs is one thing and world is something else. So, you practice religion in a certain time and place, and in business, there's no religion, it's a whole different world. Torah comes along and says, no, a Jew is a Jew 24/7, no matter what they do. So there has to be a realization that this is Gashmis, this is the physical needs, and this is the spiritual needs. But they're part of one who, meaning Hashem wants that the spiritual should infiltrate the physical and make the physical holy. So there's a split. We need to know the difference between the two. And at the same time, it's one thing that the Ruchnias should infiltrate and influence the Gashmis. What does it mean also? Another thing that Rebbe explains. The Gemara says, La'elam yayadam smel deicha v'yamin mekareves. The Gemara says, a person should always, with the right hand, bring you closer. With the left hand, push away. What does it mean? Right hand, bring closer. Left hand, push away. It means that from, let's say, besides, bringing closer Yiddishkeit and pushing away evil. But it means like this. You want to talk to another Jew about Judaism. You want to talk to him about Yiddishkeit. Yeah, that you should become more observant. So you have to be mekadev them with your right hand. At the same time, there has to be a certain level of small, left means limitations. You can't compromise Torah to bring them closer. You have to bring them to Torah, mekarvon la Torah. They have to be brought to Torah. You cannot dilute and compromise Torah to bring it to them. So the Rebbe said that's also in the kosher animal. In the kosher animal, you want to be mekad of somebody to Yiddishkeit, avoid of the godly soul, the kosher animal. You need to understand, yes, we have to bring them closer, but on the condition that we don't compromise Torah and lower Torah to them. And the Rebbe said the fact that Torah tells us to do it means we have the ability. The Jew has the strength and the ability to elevate the Jew to Torah rather than lower the Torah to them. That's the first sign of a kosher animal. Split hoofs, splitting spiritual and physical, but it's one hoof that spiritual infiltrates the physical. What's the second sign of a kosher animal? It chooses cud. Keeps going again and again and again. What does that mean? Sometimes people get bored with, as they say in America, SOSO, the same old, same old. You get bored. I did it already. I ate it once already. I have to keep eating it, like I keep chewing it and keep digesting it. And, I did it already. The Torah says you want to be a kosher animal, you have to chew its cud, meaning you have to do it again and again and again, and you have to keep digesting Yiddishkeit. The same thing, you have to digest like food, right? You have to digest it again and don't say, okay, I got it already. You can always learn it deeper. You can always digest it more and learn it deeper. So that's the sign of kosher animals. Now, what's the sign of kosher birds? It says kosher birds, there's no sign. Torah doesn't give kosher signs for birds like it does for fish and meat and animals. So the Gemara says, and Rashi quotes it, Oif nechel b'meseda. There's a tradition. There's a tradition of which birds are kosher and which birds are not kosher. There's no sign on a bird that you're going to find, what's a kosher bird, like chewing its cud and having split hooves or fins and scales. By bird, it's called Meseda tradition. By the way, it's interesting. The descendants of the Shaloh HaKadosh don't eat turkey. By them, it's the Shalah said he doesn't want his descendants eating turkey. Today in halacha, turkey is accepted as a kosher bird. I mean, everybody eats turkey. It's a kosher bird. But it's tradition, and the Shalah's tradition was not to eat turkey. What does this mean in a spiritual sense? In a spiritual sense, it means very easy, very simple. Tradition. We do it because that's tradition. That's the way it's supposed to be done. I mentioned many times when it says in Irish Sefer Minhagim, when a person says Meida Ani, they put their hands together and we bend down their head and we say Meida Ani. So in the previous Rebbe was a little boy. He asked his father, why do we do it like that? Why do we do like that? So he called in a very simple Jew that worked in the house over there. And he asked him, it was in his 80s. He said to him, how do you do Meida Ani in the morning? He said, he showed the Rebbe, you put your hands together, you bend down your head, say Meida Ani. He says, why do you do it like that? Why do you do it like that? So you know the answer? Because that's the way my father told me to do it. That's called not fiddler's tradition. Tradition. There's a level of tradition that a Jew needs to follow. What is the sign of kosher birds? Tradition. There's Yiddish tradition. This is what's the minig, of the old women. It's called minig doshim zakeni estairahi. It says the minig of tradition. This is the way it's done. This is the way you don't come up with new things, new traditions in Judaism. So this is the sign for kosher birds. Okay, another interesting thing in this week's Parsha, the Alter Rebbe proved from, it's a Gemara in Chulin, but Rashi brings it down in this week's Parsha. One of the birds that is a not kosher bird, okay, is called in Perek Yud Aleph Pasuk Yud Zayin. It says Keisa Shalach and Yanshuv. So Rashi said, what does Shalach mean? What type of bird is this? Rashi says, Pirush Rabbeinu, the Gemara in Chulin says, Zahashela dogim in ayam. We are called pelican, whatever, the ones that fly into the ocean and catch the birds. Okay? That's what Rashi says. When the Gemara in Chulin brings down this interpretation, Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, "My dichsid." What does it say in the pasuk? Mishpatecha taheim rabba. God, your judgment is in the depth of the ocean. What does that mean? That your judgment is in the depth of the ocean? So Rabbi Yochanan said, "Zahashalach." This is the bird shalach that catches fish, dives into the ocean, catches the fish, and the Gemara says, there's a din mishpat, there's a judgment and a court case, meaning which fish should be caught by which bird at which time. So this shalach is a bird that catches the fish, and the Gemara says, they quote the pasuk that your judgment is in the depth of the sea, meaning there's a din mishpat, there's a reckoning on each fish, which fish should be caught and which fish should not be caught. And Alter Rebbe used this Gemara as a proof to one of the fundamental teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. Many opinions before the Baal Shem Tov, and they want to say the Rambam also holds like that, but the Rebbe shows it's not true. Until the Baal Shem Tov, many Gedolei Yisrael leaders maintained that Hashgacha Prat is divine providence is only on mankind, not on anything else. Divine providence is only on mankind. The Baal Shem Tov came and taught that Hashgacha Prat is divine providence is on every inanimate plant, animal, human. Like we know, the Baal Shem Tov said, if you find a leaf turning over in the street from place to place, you should know it just didn't happen to happen. It happened because of divine providence. And not only that, the Baal Shem Tov added This is part of the master plan of the entire world, not an individual. This individual has to do with the master plan of the whole. So when the Alter Rebbe was debated with the Alter Rebbe, where's the source of the Baal Shem Tov's teaching that it applies even on everything else? So the Alter Rebbe brought a proof from this Gemara. The Gemara says clearly there's a judgment on which fish, or which time is going to be caught. That means clearly there's hashgacha pratis on fish. And therefore there's hashgacha pratis on everything. And in fact, there's a beautiful printer in Kutasichas in the back of Chelik Vav. The Rebbe wrote to somebody before he became Rebbe. The Rebbe wrote, I think it was to Rabbi Green last in Montreal. The Rebbe wrote a whole beautiful, beautiful article. It's in many pages, printed back in Kutasichas Chelik Vav. The Rebbe shows all the sources in the Rishonim, Achreinim of Hashgacha Pratis of divine providence, and he explains why the Baal Shem Tov's teaching doesn't contradict what the earlier sages seem to imply, that Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, is only on mankind. And the Rebbe explained, besides proving from a lot of other people that they say there's Hashgacha besides its Gemara, and Hashgacha Pratis and everything. So the Rebbe said what they mean is that there's a greater level of divine providence on people than there is on everything else. But that doesn't negate the concept of divine providence and everything else. There is hashgacha pratis on every single thing, even a stone, a piece of water. Okay? Now, then the Rebbe adds to this over here. What is the concept of sheilu dogim min hayam? He takes out the fish from the yam. The yam, in fact, we're learning this in Chassidus in the morning these days. The yam, the ocean, represents hidden things. The dry land represents everything noticeable. The yam, I'm going to make it crude slate. The yam is concealed. What is this shalach? And it happens to be a non-kosher bird, by the way, which is very interesting. It's a non-kosher bird. But what is the inyan of that bird? It takes out fish from the hidden world and brings them out into the open. Meaning, in a spiritual sense, they take the hidden levels of godliness and they reveal them open into the open level of godliness. They take hidden godliness and they reveal it. Okay, now, there's 2 minutes. The Klayaka adds one very beautiful word over here. They're chewing the cud, that's internal. Split hooves is external. It's noticeable. You look at the animal, you see the feet of the animal. Chewing its cud, you have to look. Now, there are certain animals that have only one of the two signs, chazer and gomel. Okay. Besides the fact, this is one of the proofs the Chinuch I think gives that Torah is Misinai, because since the beginning of creation, he never found any other animal with only one of the two kosher signs, only a pig and a camel, and other proofs from the same thing. So what does it mean? If an animal has only one kosher sign, that's worse than an animal that has neither. Why? An animal that has neither is emes. I don't have either. I'm not faking. I'm not bluffing. You know, the animal that has one sign means, well, I'm inside one way. Inside I'm kosher, outside I'm not kosher, or inside I'm treif, outside I'm kosher. It's not the level of emes. And if it's not the level of emes, it's even worse. It says that's why when we speak about a treif animal, what do people always say? Chazer. Chazer is one of the two signs. They could have picked an animal that has neither. A horse has neither. Why do we say it's treif like horse? We don't say treif like chazer. Because one sign is worse than no signs. Because it's, like they say in Yiddish, nish dahin, nish daher, neither here nor there. Okay, that's it for today. Mitzvah Shem Wednesday night. Again, we'll continue Hilchos Pesach. I hope to be able to get the books with the lists by then, and if not, we'll learn something else in Pesach. But the Mitzvah Shem this week, Wednesday, 8 o'clock. We'll see you all about the Pesach. Till then,
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Bye.
Rabbi.